Coverage of E3 2014. You're watching the Samsung stage. And I'm very happy to be joined by Andrew Zoboki from Petroglyph, sir.
Thank you.
You were lead game designer on a game a lot of RTS fans are very much interested in, Grey Goo, and we have it playable right here. Is this the first time you guys have actually had it playable at E3?
Yeah, so this is the first time we've actually brought it to the E3 show floor to show it off to everybody to have to get their impressions. You can actually play all three factions as well, the beta, the humans, and the goo. And it's something that we're really proud to show off and have everybody take a look at.
Isn't that kind of one of the most important things when you're talking about real-time strategy genre specifically, is that hands-on time, actually understanding the bones micro mechanics of what's going on is like important for hooking people in?
Oh, it's absolutely. It's a lot of things we look for toward the players to give us the feedback about how much they're enjoying a faction. Are they feeling where's the fun that they're definitely experiencing with it? Because we really went about creating three very unique factions in the way they play, the way they interact, and how you play with each of them strategically, especially when you talk about stuff like the Grey Goo. And it's something that you really haven't seen before in an RTS. It's a bunch of new mechanics. It's combining a race that has no base building mechanics with two other factions that have very different base building mechanics, and getting that good asymmetrical gameplay going.
Awesome. Well, we're looking at the gameplay right now, so please, Andrew, feel free to deep dive on some of this stuff. What are we looking at?
So yeah, like right now we're kind of looking at one of the beta bases, and the betas are all about this modularity and customization and building, bases that either really close together and being very defensive, or being very distributed and building out and across the map everywhere. So what you can see here is you can see like the main HQ, it's got two refineries, so there's income's going. You see two factories, and those factories are kind of just churning out the base units that are available. But right there off to the right, you can even see another factory that's got another power hub that has both a tech and a factory attached to it, and that's actually creating some specialized unit. That really made that factory combination very unique into your base as a target and as something that you're going to want to protect or, put out elsewhere. So combining the actual the modular buildings themselves results in different tech trees almost. Exactly, and the number of power hubs, or the size of the power hub dictates what kind of options you have. Like that small one, you're only going to get that one tech attachment there, which kind of limits your options there. Yeah. But it really distributes the risk. You don't have as many eggs in your basket that, if I lose this, I'm not losing all my different type of tech units. I'm just using maybe one specific site. While in the larger power hub configurations, you can get multiple techs and have a factory that can produce a lot more. Cool. So in competitive real-time strategy games, resource gathering is obviously a really important thing. What are the resources in Grey Goo, and how much of an onus is on that? So we actually went to a single resource model in Grey Goo. We wanted to keep everything simple, but give it a lot of depth. So we didn't want you to have to, really think about, okay, well, how many resources am I managing? We wanted you to focus on the gameplay of what is the strategy you're actually trying to do, what units are you playing with, what's the structures you want to build, and really incorporate that gameplay, then really put too much of the noodly micromanagement that isn't necessarily always fun. So the three different resourcing mechanics are really kind of interesting. The humans and betas share a lot of similarity, where they have this refinery that they place down, then they place this mining extractor out into the world on a density map of finding the resources. Okay. And that entire density map is actually saying, hey, where can I get the most drain out of it? Where can I get my most amount of resources? And how far of a supply line do I want to protect? Well, for the goo that you see there, they actually go around and take bites out of the world and collect up the resources and then digest it over time. Okay. So you're really mobile with the goo. You don't actually stay in one place. You kind of come, you hit a resource location, you grab the resources and run. Or depending on what you want to do with that, you can actually assault a base, assault units, and you can see the goo right there actually kind of make a big push offensive with the resources out there. So he's actually kind of got a little bit of an energy shield from that resource grain. How tough is the goo? Because it seemed to have just rolled over a pretty decent-sized squad there. So the goo has got its own powers and disadvantages. While it is very, very strong against structures and units in a really close combat, it's relatively slow. So if you're going to micro, you can kite the goo around and really hit it home to them. Because for the goo, it's all about the size, and they grow for their economics and then split that off and then create their units. Yeah. Anytime the mother goo is taking damage, you're actually kind of hitting the goo's economy at the same time. So it's that trade-off of, like, does the player want to risk it? Do they want to use that and spend the money to actually do some good, real hard damage? Or are they going to get kited around and start really getting their economy harassed? So you don't, it's almost like a push and pull of, like, do I really want to be offensive against you, or do I want to really kind of like hold back and kind of protect my goo and be this, this entity that's running around the map that you're trying to chase down and hunt down and eventually kill. Are you in control of the scale of each one of those goo? What do you call a unit of goo? The Mother Goo.
The Mother Goo?
The Mother Goo.
Can you create one, like, just obnoxiously large Mother Goo, or do they
have
a...
Yeah, you can. So, like, you're looking at the screen right now. There's 3 Goos there that are actually full size. They don't actually get any larger than that. So from there, you can actually take those and combine them down to make an epic. And the epic is like the massive Goo. It's this huge monstrosity that's Goo that will come over. It crushes everything by just rolling over it. It has tentacles that it burrows into the ground and comes up and just destroys units from below. It's really that game-ending unit that's going to break any kind of sort of stalemate.
And because of the scale of them, and I guess the fact that I don't think they're permeable. Other units can't walk through them, right?
Yes, they can actually.
So, they can.
So the Goo race itself is a race of nanites. So you can kind of think of it. What would it be like if you had this huge race of nanites that's just this big blob that exists in the world that you're going to have to deal with, and it's kind of like stepping on an anthill, right? You're going to have all those ants devouring you up. And right now you guys are actually seeing the epic being created. So the epic is really this big blob of Goo that's getting created, and it's eventually going to grow up. And then you can see it right there with the big 3 tentacles kind of moving around. And it looks like we're going to go take this guy and just start wreaking some havoc on the enemy base and units.
So can enemy units walk through it as well then, you're saying?
They can walk through it, but they're going to dissolve as they go through. So if you have enough health, or you might survive it, but in reality, you're not going to do too much.
So there's a tactical advantage then to, like, at choke points, for instance, like trying to keeping players behind it. They don't want to try if they can't get past it.
Well, that's one of the benefits of the Goo, and the Goo actually would use that to its advantage. The Goo can actually terrain walk, so it doesn't actually necessarily obey the same ground movement rules everybody else is. It can climb over mountains, it can climb up over cliffs, and that ability gives us this great ambushing type ability. So there's a lot of strategies about how do I take this, this big blob of Goo and then use it to my advantage. Do I lure you into the bushes and then, obviously just jump in there, or do I come out of the forest and just dissolve you out there without you ever noticing?
Yeah, because you could have, with the perspective, I guess, no matter what your camera angle's at, you could actually hide in one of those forests and then just pounce out and be...
Correct. Yeah,
and it's pretty scary. It's a pretty ominous looking beast.
Yeah, and then you can see there it's splitting for another mother as well. But yeah, one of the cool things about our game too is we're not angle restricted. You can actually span the camera all the way around 360 degrees, so you're not locked to some specific actual angle on the actual game.
Your team has a lot of pedigree when it comes to real-time strategy games.
Yeah, yes we do. We got a lot of guys. We have some original people who made the original Dune 2, Command and Conquer. We have a few people who have worked at, like myself, who've worked at Relic, who've got a lot of knowledge from there and bringing all that knowledge together. We kind of joke there's almost a 6 degrees of Kevin Bacon to RTSs at Petroglyph.
You
pick an RTS, you probably got a jump of like 1 or 2 of us hey, yeah, I've worked on that, so we've got a pretty good pedigree there.
Rise of Nations, you got one there?
Yes, we do, actually. There's someone who's actually worked on that.
How many degrees? 1?
Yeah, actually, I think it's a 1.
I guess it's a genre where you either know it or you don't, probably.
Yeah.
So that's cool. It's great to see collaboration in there. We've talked about the Goo. Can you kind of go into a bit of detail about what's the difference between the 2 creature classes, as it were, or factions, the 2 other factions?
The 2 other factions, sure. So when you look at the spectrum of players, right, everybody likes to play a certain specific way. There's people who like to turtle and really big bases. There's people who like to be really, really aggressive. And there's people that pretty much the spectrum in between. The other 2 races actually fill in the rest of that. So the Goo is that really hyper-aggressive race.
Yes.
The humans are all about building massive fortresses. So when you look at that base, you can see that there's that big central power core that everything's attached to. And as you start building out, you can attach different buildings to try to find a configuration that works for you, so you can produce more units, produce defenses, drop down walls. And a lot of the stuff that goes with the human faction is all about building an almost tower defense type of fortress that you're going to want your enemy to crash against.
Yeah.
So they can put up walls that the human units can just move through with impunity and not worry about. They can shoot through them. But in contrast, the beta are all about this big mechanical type structures. They really care more about function than form. And so as a result, you have really machine-powered units. They have a lot of walls that are like really solid. You can actually configure what type of turrets you put up on the walls with your own types of units. And you can see some of the units there for the humans as well. So you can see there's the revolvers and the trident, which are some of the base starting units that you get there. And then there's also the artillery unit. And the human artillery unit is something that's very, very unique in the way that it plays. While it fires exactly a projectile off that will land, it actually, if it misses its target, it actually leaves behind a landmine there.
Oh,
that gives you
cool.
this great kind of combination of use for that unit, whether you say, hey, I'm going to use you offensively, you're going to be firing into the middle of a very big, glob of units, getting rid of that ball of death that might be coming towards you, or you can be mining your entrances. You can be just automatically telling it to attack ground and leaving behind a small little minefield for it to deal with. So it fills a little bit of a dual role and gets really a lot of function out of it. We actually have a tech upgrade system that also goes with the game that lets you change those roles of some of those units. So right there on screen, you can see one of the Lancers, which is this really big, heavy siege unit for the human. And what it starts off is it bores that laser right into buildings and just likes to melt it all down. But one of the tech upgrade options you have for it is to change that laser into being more of a railgun shot where it can fire through like 6 different units at once.
Excellent.
And that kind of changes the way you would roll and how it fulfills that role in your army and what you're going to do.
So are you guys focusing on the competitive multiplayer aspect, or I believe when you're releasing this game, you're releasing almost the first section of your single-player campaign as well, is that?
We're releasing for everybody. We're actually not trying to ostracize everybody. We wanted to make a great core game. So part of some of the features are that we are actually LAN play. You don't have to have an internet connection to play.
Yeah, all right.
So
that's certainly a benefit over certain competitors.
Yeah, so you can actually go get on your airplane flight, fly out to Europe, and be playing with your buddy right next to you on the airplane, or in the middle of Africa somewhere on a safari. Wherever you want to be, you can
Could I be
having a
going
great
to
game.
Antarctica? Could
yeah,
I play
there
Grey
we go.
Goo? Oh my God!
If you're on that Sports Illustrated shoot, it might be great. One of the other features is we are doing a 15-mission campaign. You'll get to play all 3 races in that campaign.
Is that as much to do with trying to educate people about how the mechanics work as it is?
Actually, yes, it is. Actually, the campaign's going to prep you to play whatever the game, and we really took the approach that we're balancing this game so that multiplayer and single player, you don't have different units, you don't have anything special that's wacky for you. You're playing the same game. So when you go from single player into wanting to play with the skirmish with the AI, you're going to end up really kind of educating yourself to be playing multiplayer, because when you walk into multiplayer, there isn't a different type of metagame. You've already been exposed to that metagame in the campaign, and you've been exposed to that metagame in the actual skirmish battles that you've been playing with the opponent.
So it's apples for apples when you transfer over.
Exactly.
Cool.
It isn't that, hey, there's these special units you'll never see again.
We haven't got that much time left, so I want to go in and get some questions from the community.
Okay.
Kenneth Dam asked a good question. Are there any air units, and can your units transform into other types of units? He says transformers are awesome.
So the Goo itself doesn't have any air units. It's one of the things that are for the race. But the other 2 factions do, and you can actually see that guy right on screen. Each of the bombers and the fighters all have the capability of loading up and then hitting or striking something in the world, and then coming back to reload and bringing to go back at it.
Excellent. How far are you guys out from release, and are you doing any sort of beta or early access stuff?
So we're doing right now, if you go to greygoo.com, you can actually sign up for the beta. We're in closed alpha right now with friends and family and stuff, so we'll be opening that up very, very soon here for everyone to get more fun and interactivity with it. We're set to release this fall, and it's going to be released on Steam.
Excellent. I want to ask you another question, and it is maybe a ridiculous question, but I have to ask.
Okay.
The real-time strategy genre has always been associated with sort of very strong names, titles, Command and Conquer, Rise of Nations, maybe less so Dune, Warhammer. Was Grey Goo like a working title that you then just went, oh, whatever, that works, people like that one?
Actually, Grey Goo's got a lot of meaning to the game in itself. Grey Goo refers to the apocalyptic event of nanites destroying the world. So with the lore, the story of the game, it has a really good close tie-in with that. In addition to it, there's a lot of nuances with the name that I'm hoping, I don't want to quite disclose to everybody.
Okay.
It's more of a, let's see who figures it out, but I'll say the abbreviation for the name is important in its own, and it was really something that when we played this game, we had, I think at one point, 250 names up on a wall that we were like, okay, which one of this puts there? And we had some of those strong names, and we're like, it still doesn't seem to fit the essence of what this game is.
Yeah.
And when you look at something like that on the screen, and it's it's this Grey Goo that's coming to destroy you, it was like, it is the natural fit for what it is and bringing the meaning for what the game is.
Awesome. Andrew from Petroglyph, thank you so much for coming on the GameSpot
Thank you very
stage
much for having me.
and showing us Grey Goo. So if you want to get involved in the beta, then of course go to that website. We got a bunch more stuff coming up here. Airmech Arena's up next. We got Shadows of Mordor, Nosgoth, and then Codename Steam closing it out here on my little stint on the Samsung stage here on GameSpot.com. But first of all, we're going to check out what's going on the show floor.